Hello, listeners, and welcome to another episode of this freaky show. I am your host, Travesty, and alongside me, as always,
the Freak Joe.
Yeah, see, I kind of screwed you up there, didn't I?
Just a little bit, because I was not prepared. But I thought it was great. I appreciated your commitment to the bit.
Right? Well, here's the thing. I for the life of me, I can't remember what I said to make you just say, and the Freak Joe. Did I just say, I am your host, Travesty? Is that it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, noted for next year.
Yep.
Or next episode. No, we do got one more episode after this. Never mind.
Yeah.
Space. Which is stupid of me to think, like, we got one more episode, but it's probably, like, going to be my favorite episode because we're bringing back the host of Babes of Lore podcast.
Right?
Yeah, if you guys don't remember, you know, you can tune in on Halloween because that episode will be released Halloween morning, where we get to talk with Babes of Lore, and you guys can catch their. They've actually been on our show twice before. It was last year during this freaky show. It was their first time coming on, and then earlier this year, I can't remember which episode that was, but it was earlier this year, sometime in the spring, I think. They're longtime friends of our show. I know Morgan outside of podcasting and everything through the wrestling business, and Lindsay, her cousin, they created a podcast. It's phenomenal. We'll talk a lot about it next week, and I can guarantee you that Lindsay and I are going to bicker at least about something, probably John Winchester related, because that's something that we don't agree on. But you catch all of that on our final This Freaky show, which will be released on October 31st.
Nice.
Speaking of finals, this past Thursday was the last cemetery vlog of 2023. We got all 10 of them finally released. There will be a bonus video or bonus episode of some additional content we shot while we were up in Wisconsin. That will also be released on YouTube on Halloween, so make sure you check that out as well. Joe, I mean, I did the editing of all the episodes and everything, and I gotta tell you, for as much of a headache as the new format that we did, I love it. Where you record your stuff, I record my stuff, and then also the picture-in-picture of the drive-through, the bigger ones while you filmed. A little bit of a headache to edit those, but I'm so glad that we did it that way because I love how they turned out.
Yeah, they turned out fantastic.
Yeah. If you guys haven't had a chance, make sure you go over to our YouTube channel, FreakNet Studios. They're all under a playlist called Freaky Cemetery 2023. Make sure you check those out. And like I said, me and Joe traveled through Wisconsin to film the creepiest cemeteries of Wisconsin, or the most haunted cemeteries of Wisconsin. But we also did Indiana last year, and we did Illinois back in 2020, and all those videos are available on our YouTube channel. Just go over there, please subscribe, hit the notification bell, and let us know your stories if related to any of those cemeteries you've been to. We'd love to hear about those and everything, and we're pretty good on responding back to people. I think we've responded to every comment that's been made, except for one, but that was more of a troll, and that wasn't worth commenting on. So,
yeah.
But I do love it, and one of the coolest things about doing vlogs like that is pulling the history of those cemeteries, finding out when they were started and why some of the lore, if you will, of the hauntings actually occur. It's probably one of my coolest things, and obviously, Joe, because of how you could articulate things so well, just hearing you talk about that stuff is fantastic in those videos, which gave me an idea. And I think because we talked about many topics over the course of the past month. We talked about candy, movies, costumes, and such. And and then what fast food places are releasing the best of the pumpkin stuff. So I think our final topic, because next week we're just going to do a straight up interview with Babes of Lore, so there won't be really a topic other than them. So I think the final topic I want to talk about is kind of like some of the history of some of the stuff that surrounds Halloween.
Nice. All right.
And
that's fun.
One of the cool things that I want to, well, before we start with any of that, I want to remind all of you all that this episode is brought to you by CarterComics.com. It's your one-stop shop for all your comic needs, whether they be graded or raw. Carter Comics has them all. All you gotta do is go to CarterComics.com, check out their amazing store, fill your cart up with all their awesome comics. And when you go to checkout, the discount code FREAKNET, FREAKNET, will save you 10% on your entire purchase. Not just at their website, but they have 4 different eBay accounts, and the links to those can be found on their homepage at CarterComics.com. If you buy from them, the discount code works there as well. I know people were wondering, well, what if I find something here, but I also find something here? Now I got to buy these things separately and all that. CarterComics.com is a mom and pop shop. It's a small town. It's a family owned business, if you will. So that means you can reach out to them and talk with them personally. And if you find things in different places, if you reach out to them and talk to them, they'll be able to bundle everything together into one price. Our discount code will save you 10% on that final price as well, and they can ship everything to you in one go, rather than buying 2 comics from this eBay account or two from here or from their website, yada, yada, yada. So you can always reach out to them through their Facebook at CarterComics.com or through their website. So, again, CarterComics.com, proud sponsor of our podcast, a proud sponsor of Freakin Studios as a whole. And without them, we wouldn't be able to do awesome cemetery vlogs like we were able to do. So,
that's correct.
All right. The first thing I want to talk about as far as spooky lore and stuff is I actually saw this thing on TikTok. And, I'm gonna actually play this. I'm actually gonna play the video about it, and I'm not gonna tell you what it's talking about because it will explain it at the end. But I want to know if you've heard about this story. Okay.
All right.
There's a legend from 19th century Ireland about a man known as Stingy Jack. According to the story, Stingy Jack invited the devil to have a drink with him. But true to his name, Stingy Jack didn't want to pay for his drink. So he convinced the devil to turn himself into a coin that he could use to buy their drinks. But once the devil did so, Jack decided to pocket the money instead, putting the coin into his pocket next to his silver cross, which prevented the devil from returning to his original form. Eventually, Jack freed the devil under the condition that he would not bother Jack for another year, and that should Jack die, he would not claim his soul. The next year, Jack tricked the devil into climbing a tree to pick a piece of fruit. While he was up in the tree, Jack carved the sign of the cross into the tree's bark so that the devil could not climb back down. Once again, Jack made a bargain with the devil that he would help the devil escape the tree if the devil left him alone for 10 more years. But so the legend goes, soon after, Jack passed away. But God wouldn't let such an unsavory figure as Stingy Jack into heaven. And the devil was still so furious at Jack that he decided the best punishment was to keep his word and not claim Jack's soul. Instead, he sent Jack off into the dark night with only a burning coal to light his way. Jack put the coal inside a carved turnip and has been roaming the earth ever since. The Irish began to refer to him as Jack of the Lantern, or more simply, Jack-o'-lantern. Ever since, people have carved scary faces into pumpkins and placed them next to windows or doors to scare Stingy Jack away every Halloween. There's a
You ever hear about that?
No, I never had.
I know there's a legend of jack-o'-lanterns and stuff, but it's not, for some reason I remember it being different.
Yeah, I knew that jack-o'-lanterns were put out to scare away evil spirits or whatever. But I hadn't heard of that part of it.
Yeah. Yeah, it was weird. Okay, so I was Googling history of jack-o'-lantern, and actually it kind of came up with the same story. A jack-o'-lantern is a carved lantern most commonly made from a pumpkin or a root vegetable, such as a rutabaga or a turnip.
Yep.
I have never made a jack-o'-lantern out of anything other than a pumpkin. But this
it's more of an Irish and English thing, I believe.
Yeah. Jack-o'-lanterns are associated with Halloween holidays. Its name comes from the reported phenomenon of strange lights flickering over peat bogs called Willow the Wisp or Jack-o'-lanterns. The name is also tied to an Irish legend of Stingy Jack, a drunkard who bargained with Satan and is doomed to roam the earth with only a hollow turnip to light his way.
That's fun.
It's weird because I thought I remember. Holy shit! A plaster cast of a traditional Irish jack-o'-lantern in the Museum of Country Life, Ireland. That is a horrifying.
Yeah, the turnips are terrifying.
Yeah, I mean, good for them, but it looks like a mummified head.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, it's weird because, when you grow up and you kind of learn about, the folklore of, Halloween, and I think, growing up we learned about, the Day of the Dead.
Sure.
And stuff like that.
Yeah, it goes right along with, All Souls Day, or All Saints Day.
Yes.
Or All Souls Day, depending on what tradition.
Yeah, I've never once ever heard anyone talk about, the legend of jack-o'-lanterns and, why they came to be. It's weird because, we've talked about it, but my favorite Halloween movie is The Halloween Tree. That I own on DVD, and more than likely, now that I brought it up, I'm probably gonna watch it when we're done recording. The whole premise of it is that the jack-o'-lanterns that are hanging from the Halloween tree are the souls of people.
Oh, nice. That's right. I've never seen the Halloween tree. You always tell me about it every year, and I'm always surprised.
I strongly encourage you to find a way to watch it because it's a fantastic movie, and it talks about the history of Halloween. And now I want to go back because I don't recall if they ever talk about turnips and rutabagas as alternatives to jack-o'-lanterns and stuff like that, or if they even mention that it's part of Irish history. I know they talk about Mexico and the Day of the Dead. I know that part of it, and I know they talk about Egyptian times because one of the children in the movie, it's a cartoon movie, so anime movie, is dressed as a mummy. And they go back and talk about the history of Halloween in Egypt. One girl is dressed like a witch. And they go back and they talk about the history of witches and stuff, which, a lot of us know that, I don't know if we know it or not, but a lot of the witch stuff came about because of paranoia, it seems like.
Right, yeah.
Actually, I don't really know what first came up. First off, we've said them numerous times. Well, you said it because you're intelligent, is that, all words are made up words. That's right. So I'm not sure where the word witch comes from. But I'm not sure who decided that this word means mythical being and shit like that. But we know about the Salem witch trials, and they happened in Massachusetts, not Oregon. And that the rituals or the tests they had to prove they weren't a witch were absolutely absurd. If we throw this woman off a cliff and she flies away, she's a witch. But if she's not a witch, she's just gonna die. Or if you set her on fire, if she's a witch, she's not gonna burn. But if she does burn, well then she's real.
Right.
And it's just
what a way to test.
Yeah, right. It's like somebody. Oh, geez, what was it? I was watching. I talked about it, I think a couple weeks ago. That TV show, Winona Earp.
Yeah.
One of the episodes, she got drugged by some dude and lost feeling in her legs and shit. And while the guy was away, she started getting feeling back in her legs and all that stuff. And when the doctor came back, he asked her how she was doing. She said, she felt fine, and he wasn't quite sure if she was telling the truth or not. So he took this pair of pliers pretty much and just started squeezing her big toe to see if she could feel or not. And she toughed it out. She didn't move. But I'm like, you're literally screwing her foot up to prove that she's telling the truth. Right. That's the easiest comparison I can make to the witch trials. It's I'm sorry, if they are human and innocent, they're going to die.
Yep.
I just never.
But their innocent soul will go to heaven.
Yeah, that's.
And then, of course, if they're if they're not innocent, they'll survive. And then what? Then what do you do? If you've tried to burn someone to death and they survive, because they have magic or the power of Satan, what are you supposed to do then? Because what would stop them from taking vengeance on you and the whole village?
You know, that's I always wonder that. You know, it's like, I'm sorry, like, if somebody ended up being a witch, like, for example, if you caught somebody and claimed for them to be a witch, and you launched them off an edge of a cliff.
Yeah.
And if they're guilty, you just set them free.
Right.
Because they're just now flying away.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm assuming there's not some rope you have attached to them that, you know, you can pull them back in. Like, you literally just set them free at that point.
Right.
But you're right, yeah. If you set somebody on fire and they don't burn, what's your next move here?
Yeah, I have no idea. I really genuinely, yeah. There was I saw a clip from a Simpsons episode recently where they, it was like, I think it was, what do they call it? Treehouse of Horror?
Yeah.
So a non-canon. But they did like the Salem Witch Trials thing or like the Crucible or whatever, and they take Marge and they throw her off a cliff. And she comes back dressed as a witch on a broom and just starts throwing fireballs at the crowd.
I've seen that.
It's just like, yeah, that's a really, how did I never think of that before?
Let's see here.
What's your defense against someone who can't die? I don't know.
Yeah. It's
weird.
It was an insane concept that surprisingly, apparently, I wasn't there, exists. Or
right.
like I think they had one like what they rolled a boulder on top of somebody, and if they were crushed to death, they were human.
Right.
I do not understand it.
Yeah. 50,000 people from 1400 to 1775 executed.
Does it say where? Is that just
that's worldwide? I think.
Oh, worldwide. Okay. I wonder where the most was, because that shit sounds like England. Like most, like I don't think like Asia had like witch like trials and stuff, or you know, like that doesn't sound much like a German thing. Maybe German.
Did have some in England. Yeah, German. The death toll of Europe's witch trials, according to this chart I just found, Germany had 6,887 were tried and executed.
Gotcha. Jesus. Yeah,
I'm reading this
right. Let's see here. So I got this website because I do want to talk a little about like, so it's let's see here. What is it called? The Origins of Halloween Traditions. Carving pumpkins, trick or treating, and wearing scary costumes are some of the time-honored traditions of Halloween. Yet the Halloween holiday has its roots in the ancient Celtic festival of Samhain. Samhain. Yep. I think we talked about this. I do remember you talking about this. A pagan religious celebration to welcome the harvest at the end of the summer, when people would light bonfires and wear costumes to ward off ghosts. In the 8th century, Pope Gregory III designated November 1st as a time of honor saints. Soon after, All Saints' Day became to incorporate some of the traditions of Samhain, which is weird. Why is it pronounced Samhain when it's Samhain?
Yeah, it's Gaelic vowels, words, consonants, whatever you want to call them. It's like there's a I'm trying to think of a good name from Ireland now. Like Niamh is spelled Nimh. Yeah, it's just a weird.
7 billion people in this world. I'm assuming that somewhere out there's a Samuel Hain out there that if I ever meet him, I'm going to call him Samhain.
He'll like that, I think. He'll have never heard it before in his life.
The evening before All Saints' Day was known as All Hallows' Eve, and later Halloween. I believe I heard that. First time I heard that was in Hocus Pocus, I think. Yep. Here's a look at the origins of some of the classic Halloween traditions. We did the jack-o'-lantern. We talked, I played the TikTok on that. Stingy Jack bartered with the devil. Seeing Ghost. Festival of Samhain marked the tradition of the new year at the end of the harvest and beginning of winter. Celtic people believed that during the festival, spirits walked the earth. Later on, Christian missionaries introduced All Souls Day on November 2nd, which perpetuated the idea of the living coming into contact with the dead and around same time of the year.
Nice.
Which I'm trying to remember, like, because the Day of the Dead is the festival in Mexico where people will like set up dinners and meals and stuff in the graveyard to eat with their dead.
Yeah.
Eat with is it supposed to be the idea of? You might know this better than me, and who knows? It might be in this website, but like, are they supposed to have the belief that their past family would come back to join them, or is it just there to eat the meal together?
Yeah, I think both.
Okay.
Personally, I'm not a huge expert on it, but I was recently reading that a lot of cultures actually, like a lot of pre-modern cultures, didn't have as strong a feeling about like the past is the past and the future is the future and the present is separate from both of those. I guess they felt like time was a lot more continuous than we tend to think of it, and so they on the one hand really believed that their relatives were around and were present, but also I feel like when the food doesn't get eaten, surely logically you have to be like, oh well, they just ate it like spiritually or something. Yeah. You know, like I don't know how you rationalize or and maybe it's not rational. I don't know how you, whatever the word is for it, make it real to yourself that the food it has been eaten even though it's still sitting there on the plate. Mm-hmm. But I do think it's important to get together, and that part's still true. So yeah. I don't know.
So follow-up question. Again, your opinion.
Yeah.
We've traveled to a couple dozen cemeteries doing these vlogs. We know that, let's say, is it logic? I don't know. How do I word this? We know that there are people who are buried next to other people that aren't family members.
Right.
So it could get a little congested if that was happening, like at the cemeteries we go to, because it's not. Because I mean, we've seen like family plots where people are like buried next to each other and like 4 or 5 people and stuff. But then you get like some of the cemeteries like one person is buried to another person who's buried to another person, completely unrelated. Now I don't know if these are picnics or if these are actually like setting up tables and chairs and stuff like that. But how it'd be like a packed restaurant in a way, because I'm guessing you want to be eating right at the gravesite, not like. It's not just good enough to be in the graveyard. You actually have to be at the gravesite.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, here we go. I Googled as best I could to find an answer. And so this is from a website called Quora, which is kind of like Yahoo Answers. And I don't know, so take it with a grain of salt. But this person says, so the question is, has anybody ever had ancestors come back and eat some of the food on the Dia de los Muertos ofrenda? I'm assuming the ofrenda is like the altar or whatever where you're putting the offerings for the dead. And this person answers, you're not understanding what Dia de Muertos is about and how the majority of people in Mexico understand it. You're taking a very literal understanding of loved ones coming back that is inaccurate. People know that their loved ones are not going to come back in a form in which they will be able to physically eat the food on the ofrenda. The idea of the deceased loved ones returning is that they come back in our minds, our memories of them, and the love that we had for each other. They walk with us, we think about them, and we continue to love them. We don't think that they come back to eat the food at the ofrenda, but that preparing some of their favorite dishes reminds us of who that person was as a living being.
Yeah,
so like that.
Makes a lot more sense. So it's more like they're embracing the memories of them, not the idea of them actually forming in front of them and sitting down at the table.
Right. So it's a lot like how every once in a while I'll have a cup of coffee and instead of taking it black, I'll put a little bit of cream and 2 sugars in it, and it reminds me of like that's how Grandpa Snedden liked his coffee, which I found out during hospice week when he was dying. So I'll have a cup of coffee and I'll cry a little bit because I'll be like, oh, this is how Grandpa had it. Mm-hmm. But it's nice. It's a nice feeling to remember him and be like, oh, this is how Grandpa had his coffee.
That's pretty cool. I didn't know that. That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, that does make a lot more sense. And I know, like, and I'm assuming whoever asked that question wasn't like trying to be disrespectful in any way, but it's questions like that where you kind of learn more about it. So I'm glad whoever did ask that question asked it because, it helped answer that question for myself because I was because in my mind, I find it like more of the lines of they're doing it in hopes that they return in a physical sense, like an apparition sense and stuff. So
yeah, same. Cool. That's what I was thinking too. I was like, how does that work?
Yeah, like how many people do you expect? So how many chairs do you bring?
Right. Yeah.
Wearing scary costumes. I think this one we kind of talked about. In order to avoid being terrorized by all the evil spirits and walking the earth during Samhain, the Celts donned disguises so that they would not be mistaken for spirits themselves and be left alone. I think I learned that in Halloween Town.
Yeah, that feels right.
Yeah. Trick-or-treating. There's much debate around the origins of trick-or-treating, but generally there are 3 theories. The first theory suggests that during Samhain, Celtic people would leave food out to appease the spirits traveling the earth at night. Over time, people began to dress as these unearthly beings in exchange for similar offerings of food and drink. Second theory speculates that the candy boon stems from the Scottish practice of guising, which is a secular version of souling. During the Middle Ages, generally, children and poor adults would collect food and money from local homes in return for prayers for the dead on All Souls' Day. Geisers dropped the prayers in favor of non-religious practice, which the inclusion of songs, jokes, and other tricks. Third theory argues that modern American trick-or-treating stemmed from Belsnickeling?
I never heard of it.
Belsnickeling. Belsnickeling?
Yeah, sounds right.
A German-American Christmas tradition. You know what? I think Dwight mentioned that on The Office.
Yeah, you know what? I just Googled it, and yeah, he's literally a picture of Dwight shows up.
Yeah. Because he asked us, like, have you been something or have you been, I can't remember. But yeah, Belschnickling. Okay. A German-American Christmas tradition where children would dress in costume and call on their neighbors to see if the adults could guess the identity of the disguise. In one version of the practice, the children were rewarded with food or other treats if no one could identify them. That's interesting. Also, side note to anyone who is in their 70s, 80 years old, your costumes depict exactly what, like, monsters in horror movies today look like.
Right?
Because a lot of these are like, they look like warped plastic masks that nobody should ever be wearing.
Right.
This is fantastic. Oh man, I wish I found this picture when we were doing the Halloween costumes. But yeah, it's not. And the thing is too, is like when you see and look at them. Now I'm going to send you over the picture here in a minute so you can see it. The costumes aren't that far off than what we were talking about. We were wearing when we were kids, skeletons and ghosts, pirates. I think that's a dog or something in the background. But the bottom right, I believe that's a sailor. It's definitely Donald Duck.
Nice.
Okay, interesting.
Horrifying. I haven't even seen it, but I'm sure if it's an old Donald Duck costume, it's horrifying.
Well, because the way the picture's taken and the way the angle of the head is, unless you're really looking at it to see the bill of the face, you don't know it's Donald Duck. But once you look at the outfit, and I sent it in a text so you can see it. Once you see the outfit and kind of look at it and like from a different angle, you kind of say, okay, that's definitely Donald Duck. Black cats, the idea of being spooked by black cats date back to the Middle Ages when these dark felines were considered a symbol of the devil. It doesn't help that centuries later, accused witches were often found to have cats, particularly black ones. People began to believe that the cats were a witch's familiar or supernatural entities that would assist in their practices of dark magic. And black cats and spookiness have been linked ever since. I've heard of both of those. I mean, obviously black cats with witches is very common. I think Hocus Pocus educated me on that. But also the movie The Mummy with Brendan Fraser, where the mummy was afraid of cats because cats were like the protector of the underworld or something like that.
Nice. Yeah, that makes sense. That feels like a very Egyptian idea.
Black and orange, traditional colors.
Did that come through?
Is that for a godmother?
It's just a button on my my Rodecaster that plays sound effects.
You know what? How come we never used the sound effects? We said we would, and we never did.
Because I didn't know they actually worked. Oh. Almost every time I've ever used it, it hasn't come through the sound. The sound bar hasn't come through.
Ooh, is there like a creepy sound on there somewhere?
Let me check.
Yeah. Yeah, this thing.
That's all I got.
That's the creepy one?
That's the creepy one.
Okay, make a note. Next year, that gets played before every Freaky Tale.
All right, perfect.
Because that's fantastic.
Yeah.
We're going to utilize that so much more. I don't know what sounds are on there, but we're going to venture through all of them in podcasting because that's fantastic.
That's horrifying.
Black and orange. The traditional Halloween colors of black and orange also traces back to the Celtic festival of Samhain. For the Celts, black represents death of summer, while the orange symbolizes the autumn harvest season, which makes a lot of sense. Leaf changes.
Right.
Bobbing for apple. Yeah. Right. Which, by the way, all the leaves are starting to fall now. God, I love this. I love this season so much. I actually, right before we recorded today, I let Cooper out, and the neighbor, the loud neighbor dog is gone for the season. So I got the small yapping dogs left, which they're not too bad all the time. Two of them actually just kind of sit and stare, but one of them still kind of barks. But I was able to sit on my deck and just pajama bottoms in a brisk, chilly air while drinking coffee and having a cigarette. And I gotta tell you, it was wonderful.
Nice. That is the best.
I prefer a little bit of a chill than, just sitting there hot and shit. Bobbing for apples. The game of bobbing for apples has been a staple in Halloween parties for many years, but its origins are more rooted in love and romance. The game traces back to a courting ritual that was part of a Roman festival honoring Pomona, the goddess of agriculture and abundance. While multiple versions exist, the gist was that young men and women would be able to predict their future relationships based on the game. When the Romans conquered the British Isles in 43 AD, the Pomona festival blended with the similar timed Samhain and precursor to Halloween. Like question, we're going to look into the apple thing a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
So you're lighting candles and bonfires. No, candy apples. For centuries, people have been coating fruit and syrup and a means for preservation. But during the Roman festival of Pomona, the goddess was often represented by and associated with apples. Her name derives from the Latin word for apples, poma, and the fruit is at the heart of harvest celebrations. It is believed that the candy apples were invented accidentally in 1908 by William W. Kolb, a candy maker in Newark, New Jersey. As the story goes, Kolb was experimenting with red cinnamon candy to sell at Christmas time, and he dipped apples on sticks into the red glaze and put them in his shop window to showcase his new candy. But instead of selling the candies, he ended up selling the apples to customers who thought they looked good enough to eat. They became fashionable treats for Halloween starting in the early 1900s, and they remained popular until the 1970s. When's the last time you had a candied apple?
Like a properly candied apple, or just an apple dipped in caramel like an Affy-Tapple?
Ooh, you know what? I got them mixed up, but yes, let's go with Affy-Tapple.
I had one last year. I love an Affy-Tapple.
Do you go straight up only caramel, or do you do the one with the nuts on it?
I prefer just the caramel. But I like them both. I just think the one with nuts on it is hard to eat off of the stick. Because they pack it on there so tight, it's hard to bite through.
That I can agree with. For me, I prefer the peanut one, just because when I do bite into it, my beard and stuff isn't going straight into the caramel. It's protected by the peanuts.
Ah, smart.
That's the only reason.
Yeah,
But
I will say if you have like an apple cutter, like one of the ones that just cuts it into 8 slices, I do like the nuts better. Yeah,
like the apple core one. Oh, jeez, hell's bells, brother. Let's see here. That's about the last one. The rest of them was just about, again, like candy and stuff like that. There's a bakery down by me I actually want to go into, and I think they do kind of like the, because the covered apples have become so much more than what they used to be back in the day. Now they got like M&M covered ones, and I think they have like crushed Oreo covered ones and stuff like that.
That's intriguing.
Yeah, so I definitely want to get. I haven't had a candy apple in quite some time, and now I'm craving one.
Mm-hmm. Now's the time. Now's the time to crave it.
Is there any historical Halloween stories that we haven't discussed that is your favorite? Do you want to share? Or
honestly, not really. I really love the holiday, but I don't usually think about the history of it, to be honest with you.
Mm-hmm.
I just like candy and the joy of sharing nice things with people, especially children who come, it's the one night a year where everybody gets something,
Yeah. Oh, that's good. And that's the thing, I don't think a lot of people do actually look into the history of it. And that's why they got us.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, or if they look into the history of it, it's like to try and make them feel better about like leaving Christianity or whatever, or it's just like have a personality other than that.
Solid.
I understand that your feelings are hurt and you were treated like shit or whatever, but I don't know. I'm not unsympathetic to being frustrated with Christians doing nonsense, but that being said, I do think if you're a Christian, it as much as it has its roots in Samhain and things like that, like it is a human thing to celebrate the end of the year and to celebrate the harvest and to say goodbye to the old year and hello to the new year is very human. I don't think that anybody has the rights to it. It's not a copyrighted thing or a trademark thing. And so like I'm bringing this up to say if you're one of those Christians who has to celebrate Jesus-ween, you should rethink your life.
What the fuck is Jesus-ween?
It's Halloween, but for like evangelical Christians, and they call it Jesus-ween because they don't think about what they're saying. Because it sure sounds like, I don't know, maybe it's too far to go say this, but it sure sounds like a Catholic holiday.
Yeah, well,
if you know what I'm saying.
No, I 100%. I've been on board with you the entire time because because people look at Halloween like it's like this evil satanic fucking holiday, and it's not. It's children dressing up in costumes, going around and getting candy. Right. What the hell is it? Like Hallmark holidays, pretty much. It just became Halloween, which there are some people who still enjoy the traditions of Halloween. It's what we talked about. But a lot of people in America, 90% of the country, whatever, hell, maybe even 75% of the world, they just enjoy the idea of getting together with friends, having a Halloween party, dressing up in costumes, having a good time, enjoying candy and enjoying, like bat-shaped biscuits or, pumpkin-shaped cookies. And, they just want to enjoy their lives. Right. They don't need somebody, to be the one person who sits on their porch and in the neighborhood, handing out little Bibles, making sure that you're going home and praying for the mistakes you're making that you're not really making. That should happen. Hell, in Piaton, there was always that one house that I went to once because they handed out little red Bibles, and They're just maybe
Like
like
a Gideon.
I'm not sure what it was. Just a little tiny, it fit in my palm, kind of red Bible that had maybe 10 pages in it, if that.
Interesting.
And all this lady did, she gave us that, and she said, "Now make sure you pray for your soul tonight." And I'm like, there's no Twix, what the fuck?
Right?
But so.
Yeah, what you got to do is if you really want to go hardcore, do a Twix, but take it out of the packaging and break one of them in half, and then just put a little Sour Patch Kid on there.
What the?
They call it a Crucitwix.
God damn it, Joe. God damn it, Joe. No. Dude, please hand those out on Halloween.
I might. I just made that up right now.
That's fucking beautiful. That is fantastic, man. Holy hell. I didn't know where you were going with it, but I'm glad you got there.
Me too.
That is fucking fantastic.
God.
But yeah, don't be that house that hands out Bibles. I'll be happy, being the person, I'd rather go to the dentist house and get a toothbrush, than somebody, hand me a little Bible and tell me to pray for the choices I'm making or some goose. It's like, dude,
Right.
I'm 10 years old. I'm not
You're
gonna.
not gonna catch people with that, probably.
Yeah. I'm not grabbing a bag full of candy so I can head to the park and summon demons and shit. It's just
Now that being said, I have heard many stories of people who are now pastors who would take the Gideon Bibles, that's like the New Testament plus Psalms.
Yeah.
And apparently the pages are very thin and make an excellent rolling paper for a joint. And so the number of people I know who have rolled a joint and smoked the Bible, but then they're just they'll have the joint in one hand and then they're like, I have the book, and they start reading it and then they come to faith that way. It is a shocking number of people who come to faith that way. So I don't know.
Are you being serious?
I am. I know multiple pastors who that's their first time they ever read the Bible was when they were smoking it.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. So I don't know.
Right. However you got there, as long as you got there.
That's how I feel. And so maybe hand it out, but hand it out with little dime bags.
Right. Yeah. That's what I'm saying.
Don't do that. Don't give kids drugs.
Don't give kids drugs. I always wanted to be the guy who, and I think I've seen it might have been on TikTok, but I know it's been happening a lot more often. But I want to be the guy that hands out candy to kids and a beer to the parents, while they're out and about.
I always loved that, in 2020 when people were trying to figure out how to do Halloween with social distancing, and they made the beer shoots.
Yes. Oh my God.
I thought that was brilliant.
Those. Yeah, I forgot. Did they have Halloween in 2020? I can't remember
some people
now.
Did. I don't know. We haven't. Our porch light doesn't work, and so we can't turn the light on to let kids know to stop by. And this year we've got our sidewalks are all torn up, so I don't think we're gonna get any trick or treaters.
Oh, gotcha.
Kind of bummed by it.
Yeah, I know. Well, I'll talk about it in what I'm freaky thinking, but it's relatable to trick-or-treating and stuff like that. So I'll hold off on that. I want to get into my favorite part of our freaky show segments, which is Freaky Tales.
Excellent.
And it bums me out. It bums me out that this is our second to last one of the year. But I'm also glad because I believe I know what the last one's gonna be. But this is always my favorite part. I love that we do this every year, because you crush it every single time. So I'm going to, take my step back and I'm going to hand it over to you, Joe, and, regale all of our listeners with another freaky tale. Perfect.
That was fun. I liked that. So I've been watching on Netflix The Fall of the House of Usher. And I found out that there are some people I know who are not well versed in Edgar Allan Poe. So I'm trying to branch out. And one of the episodes that I've never read this story, but it was called The Black Cat. And so I thought, that is intriguing. I'm going to try it. I will warn you, listeners, if you are uncomfortable with the sound, like this isn't like you're not going to hear gore or see gore or anything like that. But if you're uncomfortable with things like the death of a pet, maybe skip to the end of the episode. But this is The Black Cat by Edgar Allan Poe. And I will say, I think the cat wins in the end, but you decide. For the most wild yet homely narrative which I am about to pen, I neither expect nor solicit belief. Mad indeed would I be to expect it, in a case where my very senses reject their own evidence. Yet mad am I not, and very surely do I not dream. But tomorrow I die, and today I would unburthen my soul. My immediate purpose is to place before the world, plainly, succinctly, and without comment, a series of mere household events. In their consequences, these events have terrified, have tortured, have destroyed me. Yet I will not attempt to expound them. To me they have presented little but horror. To many they will seem less terrible than Baroque's. Hereafter, perhaps, some intellect may be found which will reduce my phantasm to the commonplace. Some intellect more calm, more logical, and far less excitable than my own, which will perceive, in the circumstances I detail with awe, nothing more than an ordinary succession of very natural causes and effects. From my infancy, I was noted for docility and humanity of my disposition. My tenderness of heart was even so conspicuous as to make me the jest of my companions. I was especially fond of animals, and was indulged by my parents with a great variety of pets. With these I spent most of my time, and never was so happy as when feeding and caressing them. This peculiar of character grew with my growth, and in my manhood I derived from it one of my principal sources of pleasure. To those who have cherished an affection for a faithful and sagacious dog, I need hardly be at the trouble of explaining the nature or the intensity of the gratification thus derivable. There is something in the unselfish and self-sacrificing love of a brute which goes directly to the heart of him who has had frequent occasion to test the paltry friendship and gossamer fidelity of mere man. I married early, and was happy to find in my wife a disposition not uncongenial with my own. Observing my partiality for domestic pets, she lost no opportunity of procuring those of the most agreeable kind. We had birds, goldfish, a fine dog, rabbits, a small monkey, and a cat. This latter was a remarkably large and beautiful animal, entirely black and sagacious to an astonishing degree. In speaking of his intelligence, my wife, who at heart was not a little tinctured with superstition, made frequent allusion to the ancient popular notion which regarded all black cats as witches in disguise. Not that she was ever serious upon this point, and I mention the matter at all for no better reason than that it happens just now to be remembered. Pluto, this was the cat's name, was my favorite pet and playmate. I alone fed him, and he attended me wherever I went about the house. It was even with difficulty that I could prevent him from following me through the streets. Our friendship lasted in this manner for several years, during which my general temperament and character, through the instrumentality of the fiend intemperance, had, I blush to confess it, experienced a radical alteration for the worse. I grew day by day more moody, more irritable, more regardless of the feelings of others. I suffered myself to use intemperate language to my wife. At length, I even offered her personal violence. My pets, of course, were made to feel the charge of my disposition. I not only neglected, but ill-used them. For Pluto, however, I still retained sufficient regard to restrain me from maltreating him, as I made no scruple of maltreating the rabbits, the monkey, or even the dog, when by accident, or through affection, they came my way. But my disease grew upon me, for what disease is like alcohol? And at length even Pluto, who was now becoming old and consequently somewhat peevish, even Pluto began to experience the effects of my ill temper. One night, returning home much intoxicated from one of my haunts about town, I fancied that the cat avoided my presence. I seized him, when, in his fright at my violence, he inflicted a slight wound upon my hand with his teeth. The fury of a demon instantly possessed me. I knew myself no longer. My original soul seemed at once to take its flight from my body, and a more than fiendish malevolence, gin-nurtured, thrilled every fiber of my frame. I took from my waistcoat pocket a penknife, opened it, grasped the poor beast by the throat, and deliberately cut one of its eyes from the socket. I blush, I burn, I shudder, while I pen the damnable atrocity. When reason returned with the morning, when I had slept off the fumes of the night's debauch, I experienced a sentiment half of horror, half of remorse, for the crime of which I had been guilty. But it was at best a feeble and equivocal feeling, and the soul remained untouched. I again plunged into excess, and soon drowned in wine all memory of the deed. In the meantime, the cat slowly recovered. The socket of the lost eye presented, it is true, a frightful appearance, but he no longer appeared to suffer any pain. He went about the house as usual, but, as might be expected, fled in extreme terror at my approach. I had so much of my old heart left as to be at first grieved by this evident dislike on the part of a creature which had once so loved me. But this feeling soon gave place to irritation, and then came, as if to my final and irrevocable overthrow, the spirit of perverseness. Of this spirit philosophy takes no account. Yet I am not more sure that my soul lives than I am that perverseness is one of the primitive impulses of the human heart, one of the indivisible primary faculties or sentiments which give direction to the character of man. Who has not 100 times found himself committing a vile or silly action for no other reason than because he knows he should not? Have we not a perpetual inclination in the teeth of our best judgment to violate that which is law merely because we understand it to be such? This spirit of perverseness, I say, came to my final overthrow. It was this unfathomable longing of the soul to vex itself, to offer violence to its own nature, to do wrong for the wrong's sake only, that urged me to continue and finally to consummate the injury I had inflicted upon the unoffending brute. One morning, in cool blood, I slipped a noose about its neck and hung it to the limb of a tree, hung it with tears streaming from my eyes and with the bitterest remorse at my heart. Hung it because I knew that it had loved me, and because I felt it had given me no reason of offense. Hung it because I knew that in so doing I was committing a sin, a deadly sin, that would so jeopardize my immortal soul as to place it, if such a thing were possible, even beyond the reach of the infinite mercy of the most merciful and most terrible God. On the night of the day on which this cruel deed was done, I was aroused from sleep by the cry of fire. The curtains of my bed were in flames. The whole house was blazing. It was with great difficulty that my wife, a servant, and myself made our escape from the conflagration. The destruction was complete. My entire worldly wealth was swallowed up, and I resigned myself thenceforward to despair. I am above the weakness of seeking to establish a sequence of cause and effect between the disaster and the atrocity, but I am detailing a chain of facts and wish not to leave even a possible link imperfect. On the day succeeding the fire, I visited the ruins. The walls, with one exception, had fallen in. This exception was found in a compartment wall, not very thick, which stood about the middle of the house, and against which had rested the head of my bed. The plastering had here, in great measure, resisted the action of the fire, a fact which I attributed to its having been recently spread. About this wall a dense crowd were collected, and many persons seemed to be examining a particular portion of it with every minute and eager attention. The words "strange," "singular," and other similar expressions excited my curiosity. I approached and saw, as if graven in bas-relief upon the white surface, the figure of a gigantic cat. The impression was given with an accuracy truly marvelous. There was a rope about the animal's neck. When I first beheld this apparition, for I could scarcely regard it as less, my wonder and my terror were extreme. But at length reflection came to my aid. The cat, I remembered, had been hung in a garden adjacent to the house. Upon the alarm of fire, this garden had been immediately filled by the crowd, by some one of whom the animal must have been cut from the tree and thrown through an open window into my chamber. By someone of whom the animal must have been cut from the tree and thrown through an open window into my chamber. This had probably been done with the view of arousing me from sleep. The falling of other walls had compressed the victim of my cruelty into the substance of the freshly spread plaster, the lime of which had then, with the flames and the ammonia from the carcass, accomplished the portraiture as I saw it. Although I thus readily and counted to my reason, if not altogether to my conscience, for the startling fact just detailed, it did not the less fall to make a deep impression upon my fancy. For months I could not rid myself of the phantasm of the cat, and during this period there came back into my spirit a half-sentiment that seemed, but was not, remorse. I went so far as to regret the loss of the animal, and to look about me, among the vile haunts which I now habitually frequented, for another pet of the same species, and of somewhat similar appearance, with which to supply its place. One night, as I sat half stupefied in a den of more than infamy, my attention was suddenly drawn to some black object reposing upon the head of one of the immense hogsheads of gin or of rum which constituted the chief furniture of the apartment. I had been looking steadily at the top of this hogshead for some minutes, and what now caused me surprise was the fact that I had not sooner perceived the object thereupon. I approached it and touched it with my hand. It was a black cat, a very large one, fully as large as Pluto, and closely resembling him in every respect but one. Pluto had not a white hair upon any portion of his body, but this cat had a large, although indefinite, splotch of white, covering nearly the whole region of the breast. Upon my touching him, he immediately arose, purred loudly, rubbed against my hand, and appeared delighted with my notice. This, then, was the very creature of which I was in search. I had once offered to purchase it of the landlord, but this person made no claim to know it, knew nothing of it, had never seen it before. I continued my caresses, and, when I prepared to go home, the animal evinced a disposition to accompany me. I permitted it to do so, occasionally stooping and patting it as I proceeded. When it reached the house, it domesticated itself at once, and became immediately a great favorite with my wife. For my own part, I soon found a dislike to it arising within me. This was just the reverse of what I had anticipated, but I know not how or why it was. Its evident fondness for myself rather disgusted and annoyed. By slow degrees, these feelings of disgust and annoyance rose into the bitterness of hatred. I avoided the creature, a certain sense of shame and the remembrance of my former deed of cruelty preventing me from physically abusing it. I did not, for some weeks, strike or otherwise violently ill-use it. But gradually, very gradually, I came to look upon it with unutterable loathing, and to flee silently from its odious presence as from the breath of a pestilence. What added, no doubt, to my hatred of the beast was the discovery on the morning that I brought it home that, like Pluto, it had also been deprived of one of its eyes. This circumstance, however, only endeared it to my wife, who, as I have already said, possessed in a high degree that humanity of feeling which had once been my distinguishing trait, and the source of many of my simplest and purest pleasures. With my aversion to this cat, however, its partiality for myself seemed to increase. It followed my footsteps with a pertinacity which would be difficult to make the reader comprehend. Whenever I sat, it would crouch beneath my chair or spring upon my knees, covering me with its loathsome caresses. If I arose to walk, it would get between my feet and thus nearly throw me down, or fastening its long and sharp claws in my dress, clamber in its manner to my breast. At some times, although I longed to destroy it with a blow, I was yet withheld from doing so, partly by a memory of my former crime, but chiefly, let me confess it at once, my absolute dread of the beast. The dread was not exactly a dread of physical evil, and yet I should be at a loss how otherwise to define it. I am almost ashamed to own, yes, even in this felon's cell, I am almost ashamed to own, that the terror and horror with which this animal inspired me had been heightened by one of the merest chimeras it would be possible to conceive. My wife had called my attention, more than once, to the character of the mark of white hair, of which I have spoken, and which constituted the sole visible difference between the strange beast and the one I had destroyed. The reader will remember that this mark, although large, had been originally very indefinite, but by slow degrees nearly imperceptible, and which for a long time my reason struggled to reject as fanciful, it had at length assumed a rigorous distinctness of outline. It was now the representation of an object that I shudder to name, and for this, above all, I loathed and dreaded, and would have rid myself of the monster had I dared. It was now, I say, the image of a hideous, of a ghastly thing, of the gallows. Oh, mournful and terrible engine of horror and crime, of agony and of death! And now I was indeed wretched beyond the wretchedness of mere humanity, and a brute beast whose fellow I had contemptuously destroyed, a brute beast to work out for me, a man fashioned in the image of the high God, so much of insufferable woe, alas! Neither by day nor by night knew I the blessing of rest any more. During the former, the creature left me no moment alone, and in the latter I started hourly from dreams of unutterable fear to find the hot breath of the thing upon my face and its vast weight, an incarnate nightmare that I had no power to shake off, incumbent eternally upon my heart. Beneath the pressure of torments such as these, the feeble remnant of the good within me succumbed. Evil thoughts became my sole intimates, the darkest and most evil of thoughts. The moodiness of my usual temper increased to hatred of all things and of all mankind, while from the sudden, frequent, and ungovernable outbursts of fury to which I now blindly abandoned myself, my uncomplaining wife, alas, was the most usual and most patient of sufferers. One day she accompanied me upon some household errand into the cellar of the old building which our poverty compelled us to inhabit. The cat followed me down the steep stairs and, nearly throwing me headlong, exasperated me to madness. Uplifting an axe and forgetting in my wrath the childish dread which had hitherto stayed my hand, I aimed a blow at the animal which, of course, would have proved instantly fatal had it descended as I wished. But this blow was arrested by the hand of my wife. Goaded by the interference into a rage more than demoniacal, I withdrew my arm from her grasp and buried the axe in her brain. She fell dead upon the spot without a groan. This hideous murder accomplished, I set myself forthwith, and with entire deliberation, to the task of concealing the body. I knew that I could not remove it from the house, either by day or by night, without the risk of being observed by the neighbors. Many projects entered my mind. At one period I thought of cutting the corpse into minute fragments and destroying them by fire. At another I resolved to dig a grave for it in the floor of the cellar. Again I deliberated about casting it in the well in the yard, about packing it in a box as if merchandise, and with the usual arrangements, and so getting a porter to take it from the house. Finally I hit upon what I considered a far better expedient than either of these. I determined to wall it up in the cellar, as the monks of the Middle Ages are recorded to have walled up their victims. For a purpose such as this, the cellar was well adapted. Its walls were loosely constructed and had lately been plastered throughout with a rough plaster, which the dampness of the atmosphere had prevented from hardening. Moreover, in one of the walls was a projection caused by a false chimney or fireplace that had been filled up and made to resemble the rest of the cellar. I made no doubt that I could readily displace the body at this point, insert the corpse, and wall the whole up as before, so that no eye could detect anything suspicious. And in this calculation I was not deceived. By means of a crowbar I easily dislodged the bricks, and, having carefully deposited the body against the inner wall, I propped it in that position, while, with little trouble, I relaid the whole structure as it originally stood. Having procured mortar, sand, and hair with every possible precaution, I prepared a plaster that could not even possibly be distinguished from the old, and with this I very carefully went over the new brickwork. When I had finished, I felt satisfied that all was right. The wall did not present the slightest appearance of having been disturbed. The rubbish on the floor was picked up with the minutest care. I looked around triumphantly and said to myself, "Here, at least, then, my labor has not been in vain." My next step was to look for the beast which had been the cause of so much wretchedness, for I had at length firmly resolved to put it to death. Had I been able to meet with it at that moment, there could have been no doubt of its fate. But it appeared that the crafty animal had been alarmed at the violence of my previous anger, and forbore to present itself in my present mood. It is impossible to describe or to imagine the deep, the blissful sense of relief which the absence of the detested creature occasioned in my bosom. It did not make its appearance during the night, and thus, for one night at least, since its introduction into the house, I soundly and tranquilly slept. I slept even with the burden of murder upon my soul. The second and the third day passed, and still my tormentor came not. Once again I breathed as a free man. The monster, in terror, had fled the premises forever. I should behold it no more. My happiness was supreme. The guilt of my dark deeds disturbed me but little. Some few inquiries had been made, but these had been readily answered. Even a search had been instituted, but of course nothing was to be discovered. I looked upon my future felicity as secured. Upon the fourth day of the assassination, a party of the police came, very unexpectedly, into the house, and proceeded again to make rigorous investigation of the premises. Secure, however, in the inscrutability of my place of concealment, I felt no embarrassment whatever. The officers bade me to accompany them in their search. They left no nook or corner unexplored. At length, for the third or fourth time, they descended into the cellar. I quivered not in a muscle. My heart beat calmly as that of one who slumbers in innocence. I walked the cellar from end to end. I folded my arms upon my bosom and roamed easily to and fro. The police were thoroughly satisfied and prepared to depart. The glee at my heart was too strong to be restrained. I burned to say if but one word by way of triumph, and to render doubly sure the assurance of my guiltlessness. "Gentlemen," I said at last as the party ascended the steps, "I delight to have allayed your suspicions. I wish you all health and a little more courtesy. By the by, gentlemen, this is a very well-constructed house." In the rabid desire to say something easily, I scarcely knew what I uttered at all. "I may say an excellently well-constructed house. These walls— Are you going, gentlemen? These walls are solidly put together." And here, through the mere frenzy of bravado, I rapped heavily with a cane which I held in my hand upon that very portion of the brickwork behind which stood the corpse of the wife of my bosom. But may God shield and deliver me from the fangs of the arch-fiend. No sooner had the reverberation of my blows sunk into silence than I was answered by a voice from within the tomb, by a cry, at first muffled and broken like the sobbing of a child, and then quickly swelling into one long, loud, and continuous scream, utterly anomalous and inhuman, a howl, a wailing shriek, half of horror and half of triumph, such as might have arisen only out of hell, conjointly from the throats of the damned in their agony and of the demons that exult in the damnation. Of my own thoughts it is folly to speak. Swooning, I staggered to the opposite wall. For one instant the party upon the stairs remained motionless, through extremity of horror and of awe. In the next, a dozen stout arms were toiling at the wall. It fell bodily. The corpse, already greatly decayed and clotted with gore, stood erect before the eyes of the spectators. Upon its head, with red mouth extended and solitary eye of fire, sat the hideous beast whose craft had seduced me into murder, and whose informing voice had consigned me to the hangman. I had walled the monster up within the tomb. The end.
Good job, Joe.
Thank you. That was a weird one. I didn't know what to expect.
You know, I expect nothing less from Poe.
Right?
Perfect.
Oh, God,
excellent.
That's really funny.
That's excellent. God. Oh, man. No, it was good, Joe. Good story. I felt sorry for the cat the entire time. Poor cat.
Yeah, same. I felt really bad for it, especially now that I've had cats and I can't imagine hurting them like that.
Oh no, God, yeah. We have one more episode after this, guys. As a reminder, our final episode next week we'll have Babes of Lore hosts Lindsay and Morgan on with us to talk about their 1-year anniversary into podcasting. And that will wrap up this freaky show for this year. Following next week's show, we will get back into our normal banter and bullshit that we've started to enjoy more. now that we're getting more involved into a lot of topics that we don't normally talk about on the show. So, so we got one more episode. Again, guys, I enjoy you tuning into, these and being a part of this, and it drives us to keep doing it for you. So make sure you keep doing that. Joe, what are you freaky thinking about?
Well, now I'm freaky thinking about The Fall of the House of Usher on Netflix. I think I have thought about it before during this series, but man, it's just so good, and they do such a good job of incorporating Poe and modernizing it quite a bit, and it's just great. It's really, really enjoyable, and if you have time to watch it, I highly recommend it. You have just a few days left in the month of October to watch some scary things before you move into November. If you like to watch spooky stuff during the month of Halloween, I highly recommend it. It was really well written, really well acted, and just honestly wonderful from start to finish. So check it out on Netflix.
Like they have like it was an old TV show. I think it was just called like Sleepy Hollow, where like Ichabod Crane came back.
Oh yeah, and
stuff. God, can you imagine they did that with like Poe?
Oh, it'd be fantastic.
Oh, it'd be beautiful.
Yeah, but what about you? What are you freaking thinking about?
I took vacation on Monday and Tuesday next week. So Monday and the day of Halloween. Because Sherry Humpty Dumpty'd herself down a flight of stairs.
Oh no.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, she messed up her ankle, broke in 3 places, and all that stuff. She's not getting around too well right now, as she's healing. So next week, I'm taking the niece to school and stuff, so she's excited for that. Nice. And then I think I'm also going with, Sherry and Mom are taking Nixon trunk or treating on Sunday. Because trunk or treating's become a huge thing, especially in like small towns, and I guess in the cities too. I guess everywhere. It's weird that it's not on Halloween. That it's actually like they do them like on weekends and stuff before Halloween even happens, which I get it, and it's a cool concept. I think we talked about before. Is that this way, like parents who work during the week and stuff who aren't able to take their kids trick or treating can actually at least do it like on the weekends and stuff like that.
Right.
I'm a strong believer in making Halloween the last Saturday of October and moving it from being October 31st, but that would kind of, I guess, lose the idea of what Halloween is.
Yeah, as like as a holiday.
Yeah.
Sure. But
yeah.
I think it makes perfect sense. Make it the last Saturday in October as a national holiday or whatever.
Right. That way, you don't have to worry about making like trick or treating like 3:30 to 6:45 or 5:45 and
right,
all this goofy crap. And you don't got to worry about kids going to school the next day. But so Sherry wants company while Mom takes Nixon trick or treating. So me and Sherry are probably gonna sit at a coffee shop and stuff while they do that. But so I'm gonna be taking Nixon to school and stuff, nice. And she's all excited for it, and she's got, gotta get her costumes together, and apparently she has multiple costumes because why not have a wardrobe change? I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's gonna be my Halloween, and it's, who knows, I might make it home in time to actually pass out candy, which I haven't done since 2015, so who knows?
Nice.
Yeah. Hey, Joe.
Yeah.
Throughout the month of October, Freak Joe takes over this freaky show along with me, and Cartoon Joe gets to take a little break. Not a total break, just a break from us, because he currently is still podcasting somewhere else. So if people would like to find out where Cartoon Joe is, where can they go?
If you need more Cartoon Joe, you can find him over the Geekcast Live podcast at violentpress.com. You can also find us on Facebook, iTunes, Spotify, and Twitter by searching Geekcast Live.
Perfect. Guys, make sure you follow us on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, just by searching This Freakin' Show. And you can listen to our shows as they are released on iTunes, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Podbean, just by searching This Freakin' Show. And that's all I got, listeners. So, as always, I am Travesty.
And I'm the Freak Joe.
And thank you for tuning in to another episode of this freaky show. I'm out.
Nice.